Hey guys, Dylan here. Gonna be breaking down OOFS 280 coming up tomorrow at 1 p.m. in Abu Dhabi. If you're wondering, that is Abu Dhabi time. This card is loaded. The main card of this fight is just absolutely stacked, and I am beyond excited to watch it tomorrow. So, let's start with the main fight off the prelims. I'm not going to go through all the prelims here today, but we have Belal Muhammad versus Sean Brady at welterweight. So Belal Muhammad is 21-3 with a no contest, and Sean Brady is 15-0. Quite literally, the grizzled vet versus the up and comer. Belal Muhammad is 34 with a 72-inch reach, and Sean Brady is 29 with a 72-inch reach. Belal is ranked number 5, and Sean Brady is ranked number 8. Also, side note, Sean Brady has some of the sickest stat game in the UFC by far. Both of them are wrestlers. Sean Brady's more of a Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Belal Muhammad is much more of a traditional wrestler. His last win was against Vicente Luque, April 16th, in a 5-round decision, and Sean Brady won his fight by decision November 20th. So it's been a while since we saw either one of these guys fight. Yeah, it's going to be a good fight. I'm probably going to go ahead and pick Belal Muhammad to win this one just because he's got the experience. He's got the momentum behind him. If he wins this fight, it's just setting up for his next opportunity at the welterweight title fight. But, he could kind of be hosed in that situation too because it's kind of a show in the welterweight division. So then we have, for the main card, starting from the bottom, Katlyn Chookagian versus Manon Fiorot. Sorry. This is a flyweight fight. Chookagian is 18-4-0, and Manon is 9-1. Katlyn has a 5'9" reach advantage versus a 5'7" reach advantage for Manon, and their ages are about the same, 33 and 32. Katlyn is ranked number 1, but I saw that she missed weight for this fight by about 1.5 pounds, so chances are she might be... she'll probably maintain her weighting if she wins this, but chances are she could be in the UFC's good graces after missing weight like that. Manon is number 6. She's a French fighter, and I think I watched both these fighters' last fights live. Chookagian fight Ribas, and she put on a good show that fight. She put on a really good striking clinic. It was a pretty close fight. She got taken down a lot. Could be something to look at for her for this fight. Fiora is a pretty strong wrestler too. She's pretty tough and strong. Her last fight was against Valentina Shevchenko, which was a pretty close fight there too. I think I'm going to go ahead and pick Katlyn for this fight, though, just because she's a better striker, kind of a better all-around fighter, got a slight reach advantage. So, yeah, I think I'd give it to Katlyn, but wouldn't be surprised that the Frenchie won this one either. So, for the next fight, we have Beneil Dariush versus Mateusz Gamrot. It's a lightweight fight. Beneil is ranked 21-4-1, and Mateusz is ranked 21-1-0 with 1 no contest. 33 and 31 respectively for the age. Both men are ranked weigh in at 5'10". Both men are southpaws. Both men have a pretty wrestling ground heavy fight style. Beneil has a 2-inch reach advantage. But if you look further at the stats, Mateusz Gamrot actually has a 1% takedown accuracy. Not really a big deal, but it just goes to show you, 34% takedown accuracy versus 35% takedown accuracy. Both these guys are pretty good fighters. Getting a takedown 1/3 of your attempts is pretty solid in the upper ranks of the UFC like this, so should be a good fight. As we know, Beneil Dariush's last fight was against Tony Ferguson, and he mangled our man. I mean, I remember Tony there was one moment in that fight I thought he was going to get his arm broke. Somehow he didn't. He wiggled out of it and kept fighting. But yeah, Tony got handled that fight. And Mateusz's last fight was against Arman Tsarukyan, and he won that in 5 rounds in a unanimous decision. He put on a pretty dominant display that fight, really controlled the fight on the ground, and took care of business. So this is going to be a good fight. I think I'm actually going to pick Matus for this one. I think the momentum's on his side. Um, Benil has obviously got momentum too, but he's been out here kind of. They both haven't fought in a while, but yeah, I'm just going to pick Matus. I think he's stronger and he's got a better. He's got a better ground game, just ever so slightly. Now we're in the main fights, the main three fights. So we got Pyotr No Mercy Yan versus Sugar Sean O'Malley in the bantamweight division. This is an exciting fight for a variety of reasons. So if we look at the rankings, Pyotr is ranked number 1. I think Sean's ranked number 9. 16-3 record on Pyotr Yan, but we know 2 of those losses were to Aljamain Sterling. One of those a bit actually both of those are probably a bit controversial. I know a lot of people that picked Pyotr in the last fight. I thought it was pretty close. I probably would have given it to Aljamain just because the ground control was on point. But you can't deny the man's 2 losses are, pretty close. Other than that, Pyotr Yan has been pretty flawless in the UFC. Just dismantled everybody he's fought standing up. Sugar Sean O'Malley, he's got a 5-inch reach advantage and a 3-inch height advantage. 2 years younger. I would say Sugar has a much better, well-rounded striking skill set, but I would say Jan's fundamentals are much more on point. He's much more decisive. His when he lands, he's just hitting hard. He's throwing volume and power. Now, Sean tends to throw a lot of volume, and he does have power shots in his bag, but I would say Pyotr has the much harder hit in this fight. I think, in my opinion, Pyotr probably is one of the best boxers in the entire UFC, at least top 3. I don't know where you want to put him as far as strikers versus boxers, but as far as pure boxing goes, Pyotr Yan is just, he's on point, man. I mean, he can hit you with a variety of moves. He's got the whole game figured out, and he's pretty relentless when it comes to his pressure on the feet. But this is an interesting matchup for a lot of reasons. For Sugar Sean, this would be a great fight to see him win. I'm not a over the moon Sugar Sean fan. I think of myself as pretty reasonable as him. I was pretty impressed with the way he beat Julia Paiva in his last fight 2 fights ago. I thought he looked pretty good in that fight. I thought it was going to be a tougher challenge for him, but he looked pretty good. But against Pedro Munoz, he fought about as I expected him to. He looked a little unconfident. He looked a little hesitant in some of his moves. Obviously, the fight ended at eye poke no contest, and which somehow Sean became the unofficial winner of that fight because he got moved up to fight the number 1 fighter in the division after that. I honestly don't feel like he looked that good in that fight, and I'm excited to see this one to see how Sean really is. This is the truest test of his entire career by far, and hopefully this fight goes to the full 3-round limit. This is a 3-round fight instead of 5-round. I think that's probably benefits Sean as well because Pyotr's been, his last 4 or 5 fights have been 5 rounds, and so he's pretty used to that. He's pretty used to having to pace himself. So Sean might have the advantage in that, but a slight advantage. Pyotr's got much more experience. Even though their records are pretty similar, Pyotr's been fighting much tougher fights in the UFC, been fighting for titles, been fighting for championships. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. Lots of things. Obviously, if Sugar Sean wins, he's going to be propelled to superstar status. I mean, beating Pyotr Yan is not going to be a small feat. Pyotr Yan, like I said, probably the top 3 best boxer in the UFC. Beating him is going to be nothing short of extraordinary for Sugar Sean. But I think there's 2 ways Sugar Sean can win this. So he can win this fight by winning it, but he can also put on a hell of a performance. He can make this a close fight. He can make it competitive. Maybe not win it outright, but if he doesn't get knocked out, if he doesn't get just completely controlled from point A to point B, I think that's going to raise Sugar Sean's stock, being able to box against a man like Pyotr Yan, especially if he has his moments. He can put some highlight reels on YouTube and, really make the most of this fight. But other than that, yeah, I think I probably pick Jan with my head and O'Malley with my heart on this one. Next, we're moving on. Aljamain Sterling versus TJ Lieutenant Dan Dillashaw versus the Funk Master, of course, Aljamain Sterling. Their records are pretty similar: 21-3-0 for Funk Master and 18-4 for Dillashaw. 33 years old versus 36 respectively. 5'6" for Aljamain and 5'5" for TJ. Aljamain's got a 4-inch reach advantage in this one. Both of them are pretty good all-around fighters. I would say obviously Aljamain is a wrestling specialist. Does pretty good on the ground. Most of his victories are by submission. And TJ is a pretty good all-around fighter. I think his striking's really good. I mean, obviously in that last fight he had against Sandhagen, his striking was on point. I personally felt like Sandhagen won that fight, but you can't deny it. With a messed up knee and the rally for the last 3 rounds, TJ really put on a hell of a fight that last go round, and unfortunately he tore his knee and had to set out for another year and a half after his obvious and famous suspension, which I don't really hold against him, honestly. They tested all of his previous backup samples from every other fight, and he only tested positive in his last fight versus Cejudo, and if you listen to him explain it, and again, I'm not a TJ stan. I'm kind of neutral on him. I don't hate him. Don't really love him. He's a little snake in the glass. But he does have a very well-rounded skill set. He is a very good striker, very good takedown defense, and is good on the ground. I mean, he's good anywhere in this UFC. And I think that is what's going to give him the edge against Aljamain. Aljamain is obviously much better on the ground, but I think the well-roundedness of TJ is going to really come through. But, you can't just ignore a 4-inch reach advantage. You can't just ignore the fact that Aljamain's got some serious momentum behind him right now, when TJ has kind of just he's had a rough go of it the last 3 years. His last fight got knocked out in 30 seconds. Got suspended for 2 years, comes back, tears his knee, wins a close fight, So I think Aljamain's got some serious momentum, but TJ's a great fighter. People want to hold the PED thing against him, but at the same time, I hear the same people that they talk about how John Jones is the greatest fighter in the entire UFC, but they ignore the fact that he's tested positive for like 5 more fights than TJ has. Like, TJ tested positive in 1 confirmed fight. John Jones has tested positive in nearly half of his fights, honestly. So, I mean, if we're holding PEDs against people, we're going to have to go through the list and start knocking people down a peg. But I don't really hold that against TJ. Like I said, 1 fight. I'd be happy to see him come back and, have a redemption arc in the UFC. But obviously, both these guys are bad guys. I mean, Aljamain Sterling might have had a little bit of redemption after, beating Jan in the last fight. But again, it was, controversial. A lot of people said Jan won that fight. It kind of could have went both ways, just depending on who was judging it. But Aljamain, obviously had the whole knee to the head drama against Jan in the previous fight before even the last one. And people accused him of acting, people accused him of faking, but you take a knee to the head, it's never going to feel good, so who knows. Again, both these guys are pretty considered bad guys by the UFC media, by a lot of people, but I'm pretty neutral on both of them. I'm not really picky on who wins or loses this one, but I don't know. I guess if I am going to make an official prediction, I would say Funk Master has this, just based off of his momentum, his reach, his better ground game. He's probably stronger than TJ too, so I mean, that's a lot of advantages. TJ's a great all-around fighter, but I'm going to have to give this one to Funk Master. But I would say this one probably goes 5 rounds in a decision, where Aljamain wins 3-2, something like that. And for the final fight of the night, guys, this is a mega fight, in my opinion. Charles do Bronx Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. I'll start with Islam here. He's 3 years younger. He's got 4 inches less reach. He's a southpaw. Obviously he's got that famous Sambo fighting style, but he's also a great striker. A lot of people compare him to Khabib, but in my mind, they're different fighters. Khabib was never the striker that Islam is. Islam is a great striker, but I would say Khabib was stronger and had a better ground game. But Islam obviously is very strong, has a great ground game, has manhandled his last couple of opponents. But I think it's important to realize that also Islam has had a big media push. He's had a big push by Khabib, and I think there's still a bit of a question: is Islam ready for a title fight? And he's been saying he's been ready. Khabib's been saying he's been ready, so I think he should be ready. But I mean, looking at his last couple of fights, he fought Bobby Green on short notice. He fought Dan Hooker on short notice, and yeah, I mean, both those were dominant, impressive victories, obviously, but both those guys were dropping down a division, cutting a lot of weight on short notice. Both of them had a fight literally 2 weeks prior, like both of those situations. So, I mean, I kind of take both of those wins for Islam with a grain of salt, but I'm not trying to take anything away from Islam because he is a great fighter. He dispatched them both about as well as you could hope for if you're an Islam fan. But yeah, there's still that question of, is he ready for this? Is he ready to fight the absolute perfect fighter, in my opinion, Charles Oliveira, who, like I said, he has a 4-inch reach advantage. Charles is orthodox. He's a much better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus Sambo, so this is an interesting matchup for a lot of reasons. Both men are pretty good strikers, but I would say Charles Oliveira definitely has the edge in striking. I mean, take away his reach advantage, and I still think he has the edge in striking. He has excellent fundamentals. He has excellent form. He rarely overreaches for any of his shots. So when it comes to striking, he makes very few mistakes, except for the one huge mistake he makes, which is poor head movement. We've seen this the last 3 fights in a row. The dude almost gets knocked out. He gets put on his ass, and then somehow he survives and gets a finish. But, I mean, maybe Islam's going to be the one to knock him out and finally put him down. I mean, Charles cannot keep taking shots like this. He has to have better head movement. He has to have better standing defense, or otherwise one of these shots is going to put him down, and then his title run is probably over if that happens. But yeah, I think Charles is probably better off on the feet on this fight. He's obviously a great fighter off of his back, and on top. But I would say Islam has an advantage on this fight if he's on top and Charles is on bottom. I just, as great as a bottom fighter as Charles is, I do not think he can keep up with Islam in this fight when it comes to if Islam gets on top. Obviously, if Charles gets on top, it's a different story. Charles is Charles. If Charles gets on top of anybody, I'm picking Charles to win that fight. But we'll see how this goes. Both fighters are on a 10-fight win streak. This has never happened before in the history of the entire promotion. So yeah, this is a huge fight. I cannot wait to see how this goes down. I'm super interested. There's 2 ways it could go. It could either be a super boring ground chess match for the entire game, or both fighters are going to swing and bang because they both don't want to go to the ground with each other. So it's going to be a good fight, hopefully. This card is absolutely stacked. It's amazing. For the last pick of the night, I'm picking Charles to win it. I'm picking him to reclaim his belt. In my opinion, he never really lost the belt in the first place. Missing what he missed by half a pound. I mean, that's just, I don't know. Somebody get this man a towel and let him do the towel trick, DC style. But that's it for this UFC 280 breakdown. If you like this and you want to, give me some encouragement for my first UFC video, like, subscribe, leave me a comment and telling me how you think I did. Leave constructive criticism, pointers here and there. I'll take all of it. So thanks, guys, and see you around, and have a great time tomorrow watching the fight. 1 p.m. is when the main card starts. Undercard starts at 9, so the main fight will probably be around 3:30, 4, just depending on how things play out. But yeah, have a great day.